Welcome to the A64 podcast. I'm Mike,
And I'm Randall.
and this is all you got today. We're excited. We've been doing this for about 3 or 4 months now. I don't even know what episode number this is, but we both wanted to come on and just talk a little bit about ourselves and introduce you guys a little bit more to who we are, a little bit
Because
of
we
our
love
backstory.
talking about ourselves.
Yeah, we do love talking about ourselves. But yeah, today you don't have any special guests. We don't have any special guests with us, but we just thought it'd be a fun time to, just let you guys know a little bit more about who we are and why we even do this.
Yeah, most people that listen probably know a little
Yeah,
bit
at
about
this
us, so we're
point,
not
for
going to
sure.
spend just a ton of time, but we thought we'd kind of start with our background and how we got to where we are right now.
Yeah.
So I guess, Mike, you should tell us what you're doing currently and sort of how you got to where you're at.
Yeah. Well, currently I am a director. I'm the director of the Way Youth Center in downtown Seneca. I actually do that as a full-time job. I have another part-time job I just mainly do it for fun. And that's I'm a cart guy at a golf course.
Awesome.
It gets me free golf, so that's basically why I do it part-time,
Nice.
like 2 mornings a week. But yeah, my full-time job, my full-time passion would be definitely the Way Youth Center, and that's working with teens. And we have 4 interns, and my job is to manage their schedules and also my schedule. And we have 3 nights a week that we're over there at the youth center, and then we also partner with other organizations throughout the week. And I guess backstory to how that all came to be. We knew each other in high school.
Yep.
And I mean, ever since I moved down here, we knew each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say, at least me personally, I've changed. I mean, we all changed since high school. So, I mean, everybody can say that.
We
But
hope.
yeah, at least that's kind of the plan, is that once you graduate, you grow up a little bit. But yeah, from high school till now, I don't think you could have sat me down in high school and said, like, this is what you're going to be doing in 5 or however many years it was since I graduated. 6 years now. It's wild.
Okay.
For you, it's been a little bit
I
longer.
think I'm on. I graduated in 14, so
Oh, snap. So that's
doing the math
almost
and
10
science.
years.
Yeah, 9.
Holy cow. Anyway, so yeah, I think sitting down with me in high school, and I'm sure like if any of my teachers in high school are listening to this, they could probably agree with me that a lot of what I'm doing now is not something I would have seen myself doing in high school. And I credit a lot of that to, mainly the move out to Phoenix. It was probably a year after high school. I worked for my parents at their restaurant, Diener's Kitchen, R.I.P. Diener's Kitchen.
Yep.
I worked for them for about a year after high school, and then I decided to move to Phoenix, Arizona, and work at a youth ministry out there. And originally, it was kind of I was just wanting to go out there for a lot of the same reasons a lot of kids do VS. It's to like go experience something, go do something different. I knew I wanted to live in the city. I thought for a long time it would be like Choice Books or something, because that's also a really popular route.
Me too, actually.
Really?
Almost went to New York City with Choice Books.
I almost went to New York, and I almost went to Houston with Choice Books. Both of those were like, I thought for sure that's what I was going to do. But anyway, God had other plans, and I'm glad he did, because, I mean, not a knock on Choice Books, but I think what I ended up doing was really cool. But yeah, I actually had a good friend, Alicia Boley. She told me, well, Bear now, but Boley then. She told me that I should at least think about going to Arizona because it's a cool place. And then also our youth group went out there for a week, and I got to meet like Caleb, who was the director then, and I got to meet some of the teens, and just kind of live a week out there. I mean, when you're doing a short-term mission trip like that, you don't really get a great like view of what a normal is out there, but it's still enough that you get excited about it. And so I sat down with Caleb at the end of that week, and I said, hey, this might be something I want to do. And then fast forward 8 months, and I was there. So I lived out there, and I loved it. I instantly kind of fell in love with the working with teens, and felt that I was super comfortable with them. And there was definitely some things to overcome early on. Like I have a tendency to try to fix things and control things. And so like when you move out with my background, and I believed a lot differently than a lot of these teens would. And so I would often try to just kind of fix their worldview without even trying to learn about why they do that.
Yeah, sometimes the trying to morally convert instead of actually seeing.
Yeah, exactly. And that early on that work started happening of shifting my view of what it means to evangelize and what it means to even like live in community with people who don't believe the way you do, and how doing that can God can speak through you instead of you speaking at people. Mm-hmm. And so I loved it out there, and I was out there for it was probably about 6 or 7 months, and then Caleb, the director, approached me about taking over the youth program, and it did not come with a pay raise. Everything was volunteer, and he just asked if I basically want to just take over and do a lot of the youth programming and like build the chapels and like organize the evenings and stuff. And so I was like, yeah, sure. Like that sounds like something else I would love to do. So started doing that, and I loved it. And then a couple months later, he asked if I want to extend, because I had committed for a year, and he asked if I wanted to stay out longer and come on as a staff member and actually be the youth director. And that got me really excited, but there was a lot of things at home that were drawing me back too, so I didn't know if that was something that I should do. But then also another opportunity came up to teach at a school. Did not love that.
This is in Arizona?
Yeah. So it was kind of a thing that I was offered first the job to be the youth pastor, and then the job to be teaching at a school. And it was a school that we partnered with out there. So it seemed like a really natural thing. Like these opportunities are coming up for a reason. And so I decided that I was going to live out there for another year and teach school and be a youth pastor at the same time. And teaching school was something I'm very glad I did, but I don't think it's going to be something I'll ever do again. It was not for me, as they say, as the young kids say, it's not for me. I enjoyed the people that I worked with were awesome. I loved my coworkers. They were my good friends. And like, as far as the work environment, we had a lot of fun, and like, it learned a lot, worked with some good people, learned a lot about the school system and like how to teach kids well. And like, especially we had a lot of kids that were ESL students, so English was their second language. And so learned a lot through patience, and learned a lot through just like just going and like not just trying to push my way into that, but actually trying to learn with them. So yeah, and then from there I moved back home after I was done there. I was out there for a little over 2 years and wrapped up there. And at the end of my 2 years, I started a dating relationship with my now wife, Samantha, and moved back home. And yeah, that's a little bit of the history of my VS time, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'll save a little bit from there to our next part. But tell us a little bit about you in high school through VS life, I guess.
Yeah, I can remember that long ago. It's almost been a decade. But I think as far as the I don't know if you'd call it a missions perspective or like learning about VS work and me getting into it. It's definitely, I think, through family influence a lot. Maybe watching the way my parents have lived. But I know, especially when I was younger, and I still get the travel bug. But I think being a young guy who wanted some adventure in life, and I don't know, always looking for the the highs, the experiences. I would have grown up knowing a lot about Fair Play Camp. Had both of my dad was involved for 8 years, and some of my siblings were born while he was still at camp, and then 2 of my brothers were chiefs, but I wasn't all that interested in following that path because I kind of wanted to do my own thing. You know, you got to be original. And through that, and we actually, just having Davis on, I remember as a kid hearing Davis tell stories of when he was in Asia. He was on the EDGE program. I guess I couldn't even say when, but I remember those stories, and that kind of stayed in my head. And I thought, you know what, sometime I'm gonna do that when I'm old enough. And so we had life didn't go exactly as planned in my teenage years. We kind of had some things that shook us up a little bit as a family, and instead of staying in the community here like I kind of always assumed we would, I guess, we moved to Colorado when I was about 18 or 19. And I think some of those things, like watching the way my parents handled those things, is where I got interested in Colorado. It's a kids ministry, a lot of infants and a lot of foster kids, kids from hard places, I guess you would call them, and learned a lot about the psychology that's behind that. Just, you know, how that affects them developmentally, relationally, all the way through, and then what that looks like in adults sometimes who have gone through that as kids. And I was not involved directly with the mission out there, but mom and dad were, and I was around it enough, you know, with the church and all that out there. But I still wanted to travel. Ended up going on EDGE in was it 17, 18? I can hardly even remember.
Yeah, I remember you going on EDGE.
And I think that was really good for me, as always thinking the good life is out there somewhere, that you can go find it, and adventure is going to be while I was over there, I realized I guess some of what I had at home. Really enjoyed that time. It changes your perspective on the world like crazy when you start traveling into, I guess, what we would call third world countries. I think it's good for an American to get outside of America and realize that not everybody lives like us. You start to see things in your culture that have affected you your whole life that you never realized were there because they've just been such a part of you. And you see the other ways people are living, and maybe not quite as materialistically. It totally changes your view of the world. And through some of that, I started to thinking about who I want to become. I realized that a lot of the men in my life that I really respect, they had all gone to camp, and I know it's kind of a hard thing to be at the boys' camp, but for me, it was just seeing that, like most of the men in my life that I really respect did this and would encourage me to do it, so I guess I'll give it a try. And that process was hard. I've always kind of been one to, when circumstances are hard, I can just like put my head down and just kind of endure until it's over, like waiting for it to end. And and tried that for a while, and it doesn't work too well at camp. It makes you and the group pretty miserable.
Yeah.
So I guess without getting into too much detail about all that, just kind of learning. Camp was really good for me learning how to live a simple life.
Yeah.
Down trail, very
Mm-hmm.
few distractions. There's not a lot that's complicated about life at camp, but it's hard because you have to be the one to get excited and
Mm-hmm.
get 10 boys who are less than functional
Mm-hmm.
sometimes excited about everyday life.
Yeah.
And then through that, that's also kind of in the space of like kids that are from homes that might have been broken. A lot of them are either adopted or there's something there
Yeah.
that causes that just maybe a lack of ability to form good relationships.
Yeah.
But yeah, me and Heather both had been in Asia together, and we had met before that, but we started dating in between the time I came back to the States and was at camp, and then we got married about 7 months after I left camp. Lived in Ohio for a little bit and ended up here. And I guess through that process, we were, it was kind of a familiar community to me, but one that I hadn't lived in for about 5 years. And we were looking for some way to get involved and get ourselves embedded in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that would have been, was that right around the time you took over the way, or had you been there a little while?
Yeah, I think it would have been shortly after it took over. I would have been yeah, you guys would have been there like the first, because you came around December, right? The first couple times.
Yeah, we
and
weren't there at the beginning of that year.
And I would have taken over, I think, in August.
Right.
And
so
I would have
we
only
were
been there
a few
little
months
bit.
after. It's, sometimes I have in my mind that that you were actually the one that started the way, and I forget that it was another thing that came up with Davis there. It's like, oh yeah, that's been going on for a long time. It's just I wouldn't have been involved, and it's changed a little bit. But so we would have helped out at the way last year, and some things have changed with that. We're not currently, I guess, directly involved in a mission per se. We are youth sponsors at the moment. That keeps us busy, busy on the weekends especially. And then I work a regular 9 to 5 currently. So, that's where things are at today.
Yeah, cool. I guess I'll go into a little bit. You mentioned the way. That kind of is where my story picked up when I moved back. I was I was pretty set on the idea that I was going to go to college when I moved back. I actually had gone through pretty much the entire process of being enrolled and all that. I mean, it's not a huge process with Tri-County, but I got enrolled, and I was going to start classes in August or September, whenever first semester starts. And I had just moved back that summer, and it was also at the same time my parents were, we were trying to, as a family, decide what we're doing with the restaurant, like if we're going to keep it going or if it's going to be something that we're just going to give up. And so it was a lot of conversations, but our family just kind of all came to the conclusion that it was best to just let it go, because it was becoming a lot for our family to keep it running and to stay above. And we were always busy, and we loved doing it, but it was just, we didn't have enough help and enough, we had a lot of employee turnover, and the employees we had were often great, but it was just hard to keep a good staff for a long time. So we ended up deciding to give that up. And through that, my dad asked me if I can just push off college for like another semester and just start in the winter instead. Because he's like, if I can just have you until the end of the year, then we can get the restaurant closed smoothly. You can work full time and because I was helping him a lot. And I was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. Because I didn't I wanted it to end in a good way and not just to us be scrambling for help all the way to the end. And then it was actually the week after I told my dad that I'm going to push off classes. I called like my admissions counselor or whatever and told her I'm pushing off classes. It was the next week that Ben and Gabe texted me and they're like, "Hey, can we meet?" And I had zero clue why they wanted to meet with me. I didn't even know they were on the board at that point.
Yeah.
But then I was actually in Phoenix, and Alicia was like, "Hey, did you know Phil, like, he's planning on like stepping down from the youth center and they're like looking for someone new?" And she's like, "They're probably going to ask you." And I was like, "What?" And so I actually heard from Alicia before even like they asked me. And so I kind of had it in my head and I was freaking out and also trying to like, because I'm a planner and I like to like vision things and I get excited about things. So at the same time, I was trying to like, okay, this is like, we need to make sure this is the right thing first. And also I need to actually hear what they're going to ask me. But then, yeah, I had talked a lot with Samantha about it. And then the next week, sure enough, they sat me down and they asked me if I want to take over. And they asked me if I want to take over, but they also kind of asked me like, it was kind of open-ended, like, we want you to take over and lead this, but also like we want you to take it in the direction you like feel like it can go. And so at the first board meeting I sat down before I was even hired, I think that night I came home and I just started typing and writing and all that stuff. And I wrote like 3 pages of like ideas, visions, 5-year goals, 1-year goals, just like scattered a bunch of thoughts. And then I sat down with the board and showed them the paper and they're like, "All right, yeah, you got the job. Like, we want you here." And then it was like, it all went pretty quickly. It was supposed to be like a kind of a month where it was like a slow transition into it. And it kind of was. But at the same point, Trenton at that time was a kind of interim director, like until they found someone else.
Yeah.
And he was perfectly fine doing it, but he's like, as soon as you want to take it over, just go for it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
It's
need
happening
to.
anyway. Man.
Yeah. He's like, I don't like, he was asked if he wanted to be the director and he's like, I can't do it. Just cause he had a lot going on, a family life, and he was married and all that stuff. So, but yeah, so he kind of showed me the ropes, showed me around. And then first couple times I went, didn't know like any other kids. And it was like, it was one of those things I was trying to learn as a new staff, how things happen. And then also at the same time establish like what we're going to be as a youth center. And so there was a lot of changes that came, and definitely through that, like, had to bite the bullet on a lot of things because I would try things and I'd be like, yeah, this doesn't work. Because you learn pretty quickly that you can't just copy and paste from one ministry to the next. And that, yeah. I mean, that would
it's
be
easy to try to do.
Yeah,
though, like,
exactly.
Sure.
Like I'd see things that we did at Aimright out in Phoenix and was like, oh, this is easy. Like, this worked so good out there. We'll just do it here. And I just was like, this is what we're going to do. And I know for a fact this is successful because I've seen it.
Proven model.
Yeah. And I'm like, we're going to do it here. And then sure enough, it failed. And so I think, yeah, that was one of the biggest things I learned. And that's what I would encourage anyone who's involved in something is you got to find out what works for your organization. And you can glean from things you learn because you're supposed to. Like, you're supposed to learn from stuff. But also, like you can't just copy and paste because it's the easy thing to do is just take this and apply it here.
Yep.
But I think you got to be diligent and learn and like know your people.
Yeah. Applying the wisdom maybe instead of the tradition.
Yeah,
like
that's
talked
good.
About,
yeah, we talked about that with Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so it was definitely a learning curve for me. Like I had led like the youth out in Phoenix and I had been pretty comfortable with like the organization standpoint. But like as far as the behind the scenes, like I think we lost our 501c3 for a little bit because I didn't know what I was supposed to do.
Oh, whoops.
We lost it for like a 3-month. All our donors who gave it went back. So like anyone who gave in that time, it went back and applied for it again. So it's fine. We're all above water now. And it was just something that we had to work towards. And like, I had to learn, and I learned that one the hard way, because it is a pain in the butt if you lose your 501c3 to like all the paperwork and forms.
So don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah. Keep up with your monthly stuff and your yearly stuff. But there was definitely things I had to learn, but the board was super patient, super supportive. Like they let me go and like decide things, but then at the same time they were very willing to give their input on things and give ideas. It was good. Yeah, and then fast forward to the beginning of this year where we decided as a board to go full time, and that was also a huge step, and to have interns and all that, and it's been really fun. It's been incredible to see how it can grow with that much energy put towards it. It's not like, yeah, a lot of it's not at all like in my control, but it's just like we open the doors, and we open the doors of the youth center every Thursday night, and we open them Monday nights and all that. And whatever happens those nights is we leave it up to God, and we show up and we do what he asks. And yeah, it's been really cool to see that, and it's been cool to see it grow. It's had to learn a lot along the way, but it's been fun. I still don't have all the answers. But.
Yeah, and sometime in that first year, I guess when we were both there, you had the idea of United Upstate.
Oh yeah.
So for where the podcast actually came out of, that would have been a night where basically just reached out to all the local churches that we could get a hold of, all of the people that we knew that were in, I guess, heading up some kind of mission in the area.
Yeah.
And got everybody together, had everybody present for 3 minutes?
Yeah. I told them to all keep it to an elevator pitch. Some people went over, but.
Definitely. I mean.
Yeah.
But I think that was something that was really big for me, as far as just not, I don't know, you kind of get the idea that you're doing your own thing here. Your church is doing its own thing here. Sometimes it's hard to, with all the people that live around here and all the churches, to be on the same page isn't really that realistic most of the time. But to have an evening like that where you see there are a lot more people than I ever knew that are working in the area can be really encouraging. I was really encouraged by it, because it's like it just helps you not feel quite so alone.
Yeah.
And like, hey, there might actually be hope for my community, because I don't have to do everything.
Yeah.
There's other people involved. And I mean, I know from there it was, well, maybe we should just have a podcast where we interview these people a little more in depth and put it out there for more people to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, I think first off, I can't take full credit for the idea of United Upstate, because one of my good friends out in Phoenix, Stephen Frankie, he has what he calls Unite Phoenix. And so United Upstate, Unite Phoenix, kind of, I had talked to him a lot when I lived out in Phoenix, and I was always intrigued by his idea. And his is more from the volunteer perspective of getting people united around volunteering and supporting local ministries. And so they, once every month, it's like the second Saturday of the month, they have volunteers meet at a location and then go out and serve local ministries.
Okay.
And so I love the idea, because you saw people come together and do stuff that don't normally do stuff. And so that's kind of where eventually I want to do something like that here in the Upstate. Right now is not the time to do that on my schedule, but maybe someone else wants to do that. But the idea for United Upstate kind of came from that, is just like putting together people in one building that haven't been together, and that just for an evening, no agendas, just sharing and like getting to know each other. And it was cool to see, like, we did the elevator pitches and stuff, but then beyond that is when the conversations happen. And then that's kind of what sprung into this, like the podcast, and like let's have conversations with these people, and then let's let people like hear that and spark other ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's been people that have told me, like even JD, for example, he said that he met someone there at that night from Ripple of One, and then now he's like mentoring someone at Ripple of One. And so it was just like the little intro, and then it sparked a conversation, and then from there it like went. So it was cool. So yeah, that's kind of where the vision for this podcast came from. And I knew that me and Randall, we did a lot together when we were at the youth center together, and we enjoyed talking about various stuff. And then also like we both did the United Upstate and helped with that. And so it was just kind of a natural thing when I asked you. I was like, do you want to do this with me?
Why not?
And at first we had no idea what we're doing, and we still don't really know what we're doing, but we're just kind of going with the flow. And I think like it's been fun. It's been fun for us because we both had the opportunity to see different sides of people, and I think that's the vision of what we had, is we want to show people what's happening, but then also like you're going to see a different side to your pastor. You're going to see a different side to that youth leader, like their story to like what drives them to do what they want to do.
Yeah. Like for me, one of the things that's been interesting is talking to people, even like Vernon, and hearing how the coffee shop got started, how I guess even how God worked in all those situations, because they're from my perspective, like he started that when I was pretty young and very unaware of what was going on, and so there's these missions around, and these people that seem very well ingrained in the community, and somehow you just assume they've always been there, and that this is just the way the world is. But to hear how they got there and the path that God led them on is always encouraging to me, even just for like, so where am I going to end up? I don't really know, but here's some steps that I can follow and know that God's going to lead me along the path that I'm on.
Yeah. I think one of the highlights for me, like over the last couple months of interviewing people, is seeing the baby steps that they took out of faith, and then just seeing God multiply that step.
Yeah.
Like, comes to mind like Abby and like her, like with the Foothills Care Center. It was kind of a long drawn out process for her, but it turned into a baby step. Like she had the opportunity to go do something, and then it just like boom, like multiplied. And because it was an act of faith for her, and then she stepped out on it, and now she's very involved over there, and now she's doing a lot of other stuff too that she probably would have never done if she would have just stayed like content with where she was at, and like but instead following God's calling for her. And then the same like for Abby Crooks and Lindsay at Fostering Faithfully, like they saw something, and they knew they weren't equipped for it. They were very clear about that. They're like, we don't really know what we're doing all the time. But they took that step, and they're like, this is what we know God wants us to do. And then they stepped out in faith, and then God's like multiplied it. And it's really cool to see. And then, I don't know. Even thinking back on the pastors we've had and what they've learned, from like mentoring a flock to even like public speaking, stuff like that may have not come naturally for them, but when they were put into the role of like pastoring a church, then they got intentional about like, okay, we're gonna do this to the best that God wants us to do it. So
and in a lot of those cases, there's a lot of preparation that's happening beforehand, whether you realize it or not. The way God's working and setting you up for success later. I love seeing that.
I think it's just been encouraging, and I don't think anyone can listen to our podcast and think like that they're not qualified to do something, because we've had enough people on here that have said themselves like, I'm not qualified, but I was still able to do something. And so I think really you have no excuses at this point, because we've had people on that have done awesome things and they're not qualified. Like even, yeah, there's so many people. But then I think it's also been cool just to see God work in all of them, but then also to connect them to other people too, and like make connections here, make connections there, and like that. That's what we want to also bring to light, is that whenever you do start with something like this, like God's going to send people your way to help you and support you and connect you, and none of us are doing this alone. So
yeah. Well, are we ready for our last question?
Yeah, might as well be. I got it. I wanted to look at the big word I was going to use.
Awesome. We're all about big words.
Full transparency.
Yep. So, Mike, what is one thing the world needs more of?
Big word time. I actually just heard this word in a podcast, so I don't actually, if it means something, I looked into what it means, but the way they use it is really cool. So hopefully it doesn't mean something absolutely terrible. It at least
sounds good.
It sounds cool. It's called epistemic humility. The world needs more of that. They also need, I'll dig into that a little bit. Epistemic humility, at least the way that I heard it on this podcast, was really cool. And it's basically that we need to be more humble about the things we don't know and just own up to the things we don't know. And whether that's theology, whether that's just real world knowledge, you see a lot of people, and I'm very guilty of this, that you get an idea stuck in your head and you want it to be true and you believe it to be true, so you'll fight till the day you die that it is true, instead of actually taking a step back and being humble enough to say, this might be wrong. And I think that ties into a lot of the character of like bullheadedness and stubbornness and even just like hostility, because when people think that they're right about everything, or even if they think they're dead right about one thing, it instantly, like, probably half of the U.S. population is the other way. Mm-hmm. So it puts you in a position that you're kind of pushing people away. And I think if people want to unite and be united believers in a united church, people need to be more humble about the things they believe and be more open to being wrong about stuff if they are wrong about stuff. And yeah, I'm not saying that you should just live your life thinking you're wrong about everything, because I think God teaches us things, and I think we're supposed to stand up for what we believe in. But don't be so bullheaded about it that you're making a fool out of yourself and you're making yourself not a good image bearer. So
yeah,
that's kind of what I think the world needs more of.
Yeah. For me, I was just kind of thinking of the idea of, I think the world needs more Christians who live slow enough to get to know their neighbors and their community. Mm-hmm. I just, more and more, I'm realizing how much of a culture of panic sometimes we live in, where we're all very aware of the big issues in Washington that are going to ruin everything, and there's a lot of people in the world that, because we're trying to take in so much information and like things from far away that might affect our lives, and people far away that are always the enemy and, threatening us, we forget to just live the simple gospel and live in our communities and get to know our neighbors' names and I don't know, just do what we're called to do where we're at. It's easy to worry about the big picture, and I would venture to say that a lot of churches are so concerned with the big picture that they're doing almost nothing in their local community. And I believe that the way the church is supposed to work is everybody just does their job right where they're at. And as a body, first, like even starting as the individual and the family, as the individual and family does their job, the local church there is then doing their job. And from there, it's the church across the states and the world from our perspective. So I feel like we could benefit a lot from just slowing down
Yeah.
and just living where we're at.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I love what you said, get to know your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot remember where I heard that from recently. Was that on here that I heard that?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, because I heard it from somewhere. It was either a podcast or something. They're like, how many people actually like know their neighbor or have met their neighbor, and that's a really good thought. Is like,
yeah, it's something me and Heather are working on. We live in an interesting neighborhood of like most of the houses are kind of set back off the road, and you often have to walk through a gate if you want to get to a front door. But we've got most of the immediate neighbors. We've at least met them and know their names, and we always try to write it down when we do get another name so we can remember for the future. But I don't know. That's something that we've been trying to practice and just I don't know. We've thought about setting up like a low country boil for everybody
awesome.
in the vicinity, and we've
That's
talked to
awesome.
a couple neighbors about it, and they're excited about it. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but just that idea of like that's what I want the church to be like.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of hard to do it yourself, and so we want to be like that, and we're gonna attempt it one way or the other, and we'll see how it goes. But
because as individuals we make up the church. So if us as individuals, like you said, are doing our job and like doing what we can to be neighborly and to like work in the community around us, I think that multiplies in that.
There's just a lot of lonely people out there, and it's actually not that hard to get to know people when you just talk to them.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that was fun. I hope we didn't bore you with just us. And hopefully
nobody exciting.
Yeah, we didn't have anyone exciting on, but I hope you guys continue to listen. Our guests that we have on they're awesome. I've been loving to get to know our guests. So keep listening. Keep telling your friends, tell them to listen too, because they might learn some things too. So, we're excited to keep on doing this for you guys, and hopefully you learned a little bit more about us. And I guess we'll be here week in, week out, or at least sometimes we miss weeks, but we try to be here most weeks.
Yep.
So, anyway, all right. Well, that's a wrap.
Like and subscribe.